Hi guys, it's Linda from Waking You again for this week's Meal on a Budget. So this week, it's going to be one of those you either love it or you hate it. I am making a fish pie. Because we're going into the holiday season, there's a lot of poultry, a lot of all of that stuff happening. Figure I wanted to do something nice and quick and easy and also inexpensive. So I ended up spending $12.87 today. I bought some smoked, yellow smoked cod. It is very inexpensive. It's very tasty. It adds a lot of flavor. You can use fish pie mix, which is cod, salmon, whatever type of seafood that you like that's inexpensive. This was less than $10. You also need some milk. Most people have it in the house. If you are plant-based and you don't want to use regular dairy milk, avoid oat or almond. There's high fat content and it doesn't seem to boil very well when you're making this. Go with like a silk coconut milk. Not the cans, the ones that come in cartons like this. And I also have an onion, flour from our pantry, and the rest of our remaining potatoes that we have from the recipes over the last couple of weeks. Two optional items are your seasonings. So I'm using dill and parsley, just adds a little bit of flavor. If you have frozen corn or peas, you can use that as well. I choose not to do it in there. As well as a little bit of butter, if you want a little bit of added fat. Because I use a non-fat milk, I always put a little bit of butter in my boiling broth. So I'm going to get the potatoes started because that takes the longest of this entire process. So be back in a couple of minutes once I have the potatoes on, and we'll get this started. So we have our potatoes getting ready to boil. So what we're going to do is make those into a mash. I have a little bit of butter in my saute pan with the onions. Only use the butter if you're using a non-fat milk. If you're using a whole fat or 2% milk, there's enough fat in there to give it that unctuousness without needing the additional fat. I've also chopped up all of the smoked cod into fairly substantial pieces because you don't want it to break down too much when it is boiling here. So we're going to fry up our onions, let them become a little bit translucent. Add a little bit of salt and pepper so that we have a little bit of seasoning in our base. And we will now add in our milk. So I have 2 cups of milk. I'm going to put all but just, I don't know, what is that? Quarter of a cup, third of a cup. Because I'm going to use the remaining milk as my slurry. I'm going to add some flour to that. And that'll be our thickening agent. So we're just going to stir the milk, onions, and butter together. Put that on high. We will add in all of our fish. If you are using salmon, cod, the uncooked stuff, add it in and let it boil a little bit longer. This is completely cooked, so we're literally just warming it up a little bit. So we're going to let this boil, and we'll be back in just a minute to get it all ready to assemble and make our slurry. Just so you're aware, if you do not eat fish, you can use a smoked tofu. You can use a smoked tempeh. You could do this with chicken, but I don't think it would turn out very well. It's whatever you prefer. As a warning, if you are using the smoked fish, your house is going to smell like seafood. I don't object to that, but it's just a warning. The first time I made this, it was quite a surprise. Walking out of the house and coming back in, it definitely leaves a seafood aroma. But if you enjoy fish, you'll enjoy this. We'll be back in just a minute. So our potatoes are just about ready, and our milk has come to a boil. So I'm just going to pour, to make a mess, we're going to just pour all of that yummy liquid into the bowl, because it just makes it easier to thicken the sauce if the seafood chunks are not in it. So we're going to pour that back into the pan. Make a bit of a mess, but that's what I do. So we'll leave that to the side just for a second. Bring that back up to a boil. And we've got our slurry, our remaining milk that we had, and our about 2 tablespoons of flour. You can use water, but because non-fat milk is very watery, it works just as well for our slurry. So I'm just going to bring that back up to a boil. Pour that in, and use the whisk to help thicken your mixture. Once that thickens a little bit, which we're going to use a different spatula, that one, there we go. Once that starts to thicken a little bit, then we will pour our fish mix back in, bring it back up to heat. We'll mash up our potatoes and get it assembled. We'll be back in just a second. So we have our potatoes mashed up here. Our sauce is bubbling away and it's just getting to that thicken point. I did have some leftover peas from the recipe the other week, so I'm just going to put those frozen peas in there. A little bit of dill, because dill and seafood goes really well together. And I like a little bit of parsley flake. Again, all of the seasonings are optional. You don't want to have to spend any extra money. It's not necessary. It will taste just as wonderful. So we're just going to stir that up, and you can see how it's getting nice and thick here. So then we are going to go and locate the dishes that we're going to put this in the oven on. So we'll be back in 2 seconds to get that taken care of. So we have our sauce mixture here in the bottom. It will continue to thicken a little bit in the oven. I mashed the potatoes, and because we have 2 cups of milk left, I did end up putting a little bit of milk in my mashed potato, so they're more of a creamed potato. So you just lay the potato on top as well as you can. Again, we're not looking for a masterpiece of art. It is deliciousness. So we'll toss that. If you wanted to make this true pie, you would definitely just need to thicken the sauce a little bit more if you wanted to do like a puff pastry on top or a crust. But for me, being of British ancestry and being involved with a Brit, doing it with potato, having a pie be a potato pie rather than a crusty pie seems to work very well in our family, so that's a very good thing. So he's walking around behind camera. Good thing you guys can't see him, but he could be making this as well. I'll probably have him make the next one. So all we're going to do is when this is ready, all of the potato is on top, it looks nice and pretty, we're ready to go. Put in the 350-degree oven for 15 to 20 minutes until it gets a nice little crust on the top of the potato. And again, this is just for your personal preference. If you had some leftover cheese in your house that you wanted to put on top, a lot of people are like, oh my god, cheese and seafood. Why not? If you like it, your stomach will too. Always when you're doing this recipe, please put it on a cookie sheet or a baking pan of some sort. It will bubble over, and I personally would rather wash this than my oven. 15, 20 minutes, maybe a little bit longer depending on your oven. Toss that in and it'll be ready to go. So I'm hoping you have a great holiday season. Enjoy this recipe. We'll be doing a lot more in the new year, and we look forward to seeing you then. Stay well.